You're listening to Radio Looks Lucet. I'm your host, Steve Matthews. Thanks for joining me today for episode 59. The title of this episode is Antichrist's Immigration Assault on America. So, welcome back to the program here. I know it's been a good while, almost 4 months. It's hard to believe that the last time I did a podcast was back on May 28th. I went back and I checked my record. So it was right around Memorial Day. And that was it was a Memorial Day podcast that I did. And so here I am. It's almost, it's mid-September, a little bit past the middle of September, and I'm doing my next one. So it's been a long time, and it's great to be back. It's if I sound a little bit like I'm out of practice and I don't know what I'm doing, it's probably because I'm out of practice and I don't know what I'm doing. This is my third start of the podcast here this evening. It's like the first one I clicked on something I didn't mean to do that. I didn't even have my podcast recorder set up, and I got that set up, and then I started doing the live stream and realized I didn't have my podcast recorder on, so I had to cut that off and then start again. So this is my third take on this. So maybe I'll find what do they say? Third time's a charm. I don't know. Maybe this will be hold true to that old saying. So anyway, as I said, it's great to be back and welcome to the program. One of the things that's really kind of prompted me and pushed me into getting back into podcasts is just how much just appalling stuff that's going on right now. I can't even begin to talk about it all on a single podcast. But I'm seeing here. I mean, some of the COVID lockdowns. We've got some of that stuff going on again. Some of things are pretty normal here in Ohio where I am, actually remarkably so, and I'm very thankful to God for that, for the opportunity to actually be able to live life pretty normally. I know that there are a lot of people who like to bring that to an end, but hopefully that's something that we can continue with here. Then there's the vaccine mandates. The Joe Biden got on there and had his tyrannical, dictatorial vaccine mandates last week, and there doesn't seem to be a lot that's come of that right now. But as a person who's employed, and I do work for a company that employs over 100 people, that's targeted directly at me. And I have to say, I don't want any part of this vaccine. I think it's neither safe nor is it effective. And I think that there are some real serious liberty issues that are connected with it as well. I mean, it seems to me the whole purpose of that vaccine is to push people into some sort of vaccine passport system. And the vaccine itself is also appears to be quite dangerous. And it's not something that I want any part of. But yet Joe Biden seems to think that it's his right as president, which it isn't, but he seems to think it is, or at least wants people to think that it is, to dictate what types of vaccines they have to take. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. That's still very much up in the air. Of course, there was the disastrous pullout from Afghanistan that took place toward the end of August. People are still talking about that. And then there's just the daily corruption that we all have to deal with. I mean, just this last week, it was revealed that a number of high officials of the Federal Reserve, they've been basically insider trading on the stock market. They control the Federal Reserve substantially controls the performance of the stock market, and these guys are in there trading their stock accounts, and it's not a good look. I think there's some very serious questions there about what was going on. It just came out the mayor of San Francisco, I think her name is London Breed. She was just, I guess, instituted a mask requirement policy in San Francisco, and of course she was caught on camera at some party partying without a mask on. I mean, which is again just fairly typical. There are masks and rules for thee, but not for me. I mean, that's the way our public officials act. And she was, of course, right in keeping with all of that. So you've got this corruption, you've got this just egregious hypocrisy that's going on out there. But the main thing that I wanted to talk about tonight, there's so many things we could talk about. I could probably be here for hours, and you probably a lot longer than you want to listen to. But the main thing I wanted to talk about tonight was kind of hinted at in the title, and that is the immigration disaster that we see going on our southern border. And so let's go ahead and talk some about that. Now, what I'd like to talk about, first of all, is Antichrist. I'm going to quote to you here. This is from the Westminster Confession of Faith, chapter 25, paragraph 6. Quote, "There is no other head of the church but the Lord Jesus Christ, nor can the Pope of Rome in any sense be head thereof, but is that Antichrist, that man of sin and son of perdition, that exalteth himself in the church against Christ and all that is called God." End quote. Now, you may be asking yourself, okay, Steve, so you've gone off the deep end here. You said you're going to talk about immigration, but now you're quoting from the Westminster Confession of Faith and talking about the Pope being the Antichrist. So, what do these things have to do with each other? Well, they actually have quite a lot to do with each other. Um, and it really comes down to this. It's important as Christians, and I speak, and this is true for anyone, but I think this is especially true to my fellow believers, especially even my fellow Reformed believers, that you understand who Antichrist is and who's behind the the ongoing immigration disaster that we have. You may have seen, you probably have seen some of these pictures, some of these videos from what's going on the southern border right now. In fact, I would like to do a little screen share here with you. Let's see if I can make this work here. Okay, here we go. Here we go. This is a video. This is something that I found out there on Twitter, and I'm going to play this. It's a little bit. It's about a minute long. So let's go ahead and play that and listen to the narrator, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the border crisis.
On the Texas side of the Rio Grande River, at about the point where thousands and thousands of Haitians are crossing over into the city of Del Rio, and there are over 10,000 now that are just being allowed to pour over the border. They seem to mostly be Haitians. There's also some Cubans among them, but really a vast majority of them seem to be Haitian, the ones that I've talked to. That right there is the international bridge, providing some shelter and cover for these immigrants who are being allowed to just cross over, and they're going to probably be living here for weeks as thousands more come. Border Patrol is totally overwhelmed. They can't possibly process these people. They predict that the average wait time will be probably 3 weeks before the last one of the ones that just came in today will get processed. So they will just simply be here. Some of them have tents. They're looking to stay here for a while. You can see.
Okay. So that was that was a video from from a Center for Immigration Studies, and just taken right down there in Del Rio, Texas. It's a border town right there on the U.S. Mexico border, and there's been a lot of videos out there. Another good source if you're interested in following some of that is Bill Malugin with Fox News. He's done some really good work, some very consistent work on this particular issue. And so if you may want to check out his Twitter feed, he's got a lot of good stuff, a lot of regular reports. I've been actually following him for the last several months, and I found him to be a very good source of information on our manufactured disaster on the southern border. I mean, this is something that I say manufactured. It was manufactured by the Biden administration. I mean, this has been done intentionally. This is not a surprise. I mean, this is not a policy failure. I mean, I think a lot of people maybe think this is a policy failure from the standpoint of the Biden administration and the people for whom Joe Biden is answerable, to whom he's answerable. This is a policy success because what they're doing is they're flooding the country with welfare migrants. This is an attempt again at replacement migration. I mean, what they want to do is they're looking to replace America's historic Protestant majority with kind of basically a migrant Tower of Babel. And there are some reasons why they're doing this, and we'll talk a little bit about that. It's kind of interesting. The stuff with the Haitians has gotten so out of hand that it's even getting to the point where it's embarrassing the Biden administration. Let me share this here with you. This is an article. This is from Just a couple days ago, this is from Thursday, September 16th, 2021. It's got the headline Advocates in Utter Disbelief After Biden Resumes Haitian Reparations. So it's gotten so bad that that the Biden administration that has caused all of this mess is actually feels that it has to go and let's see, am actually sharing the thing that I want to share here. Let's see here. It doesn't look right. Let's try that again. Okay. Let's try that. There we go. That's better. That's full screen. So yeah, and they go through here and they quote some people that, for instance, Ayanna Pressley, uh, and she wants that ICE would continue. She says that ICE would continue to carry out the mass deportations of our Haitian neighbors, with Haiti in the midst of its worst political, public health, and economic crisis, is yet is cruel and callous. And the article continues in this way. And the thing that I find that's so annoying about this article and other ones is that, again, you've got these American politicians that supposedly are supposed to represent the American people, who are having a pretty hard time right now, by the way, with unemployment, with inflation. There are a lot of people who are really struggling because of the COVID lockdowns and all of the disaster, that the economic disaster that's happened because of that. But these politicians like Ayanna Pressley have zero compassion on their fellow Americans and the people they're supposed to represent. But she can have massive compassion on Haitians. Well, yeah, Haitians have problems, but so do Americans. And it's not the job of the federal government to force the American people to pay for this stuff. That is not Christian charity. That is government welfare. And government welfare and Christian charity are very different things. Christian charity is about giving of your own things, about giving of your own time, of your own money. Government welfare is getting the government to steal money from one person and give it to somebody else. And in this case, Ayanna Pressley wants to give your stuff to Haitians who came here illegally. They didn't even try to come into the country according to our immigration laws. They completely disregarded that. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I mentioned before. I quoted I quoted that passage from the Westminster Confession identifying the Pope as Antichrist. So why did I do that? Now, in my opinion, that there are any number of persons or organizations that can be identified as causes of our ongoing immigration disaster. You can talk about the UN, you can talk about George Soros, you can talk about the World Economic Forum, you can talk about the Bilderbergers, and as I said, any number of groups that you can put in here. Rockefellers, Rothschilds, all of this stuff. I'm not saying that there are a lot of different groups, but there's one group that stands out above all that is super aggressive about pushing replacement migration, not just in the United States, but in Europe, and really even in other countries as well. And places like Japan and South Korea, for example. And that is the Roman Catholic Church state, together with its Antichrist head, the Pope, which office is currently being held by Jorge Bergoglio, doing business as Francis I. Put another way, America, and not just America, but I'm going to talk about America principally because that's where I live and I know the situation the best. But America is under assault by Antichrist. And this is being done on a number of fronts. For instance, we see climate change. Joe Biden is pushing the climate change agenda. He put this country back into the Paris Accord. He's pushing, you hear mumblings and rumblings about, Green New Deal. And then, of course, Joe Biden openly quoted from the Pope's 2015 encyclical Laudato Si. He actually approved this. And of course, and the interesting thing too is that the Pope, in that very same encyclical, which is principally about the environment, but it touches on other topics, the Pope openly once again called for a world government. We're under assault by socialism. Now, socialism is basically it's the core economic belief of the Roman Catholic Church state. So all these people pushing socialism, for instance, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she went to the Met Gala the other day in her this flashy white gown that said "tax the rich" on it. Well, she is a socialist and she's a Roman Catholic as well. But socialism, I mean, the socialist agenda is being pushed very, very hard. And of course, socialism is integral. It's not ancillary. It's not something that is accidental to the Roman Church state's political and economic philosophy. It's actually central to it. Race is another thing. Of course, we've had these issues with critical race theory. Well, who's pushing critical race theory hard? Well, the Roman Church state again. And then there's the immigration. The immigration, which is designed to transform this nation by replacing its historic Protestant majority population with something that's very, very different. Sometimes it's called replacement migration. It's a real thing. That's something Tucker Carlson has talked about as well. He's one of the few people in the mainstream press who's had the courage to talk about that. But yes, that is what's going on. And it's important for you to understand and again, I'm speaking here to my fellow Protestants, to my fellow Reformed believers. It is absolutely critical that you understand who's principally behind this immigration flood. It is Antichrist, and it is the Roman Catholic Church state that is pushing this. They're the biggest instigators of this sort of thing. That's who's doing this. And of course, we have a Roman Catholic president who's carrying out the bidding of Pope Francis. Now, again, it's not important just to understand America's under assault by Antichrist, but it's critical to understand also who Antichrist is. Now, I quoted to you earlier from the passage from the Westminster Confession of Faith. Now, nearly to a man, the Protestant reformers understood Antichrist as the office of the papacy. So it wasn't just any one pope. It wasn't, Pope John Paul the second or Benedict the 16th or Francis the First. It's the whole line of popes, all of them. They are all Antichrist. It is the office of Antichrist. Now, this identification was so unanimous at the time of the Reformation and in even the centuries following that again, the Westminster Confession had that hard coded into the confession itself. It had some very clear, some very specific language about the identity of Antichrist. Now, all that was stripped out of the mainline version of the Westminster Confession a little bit over 100 years ago, and it says something about that that the Pope that the Lord Jesus Christ is the only head of the church, and the Pope in no sense can be head thereof, and that's it. It leaves everything after that off. There's no language in there about he's the Antichrist, the son of perdition, who exalts himself in the church against Christ and all that's called God. There's nothing in there about that. And one of the results of this is that Presbyterians and Protestants more generally have become very confused about the identity of Antichrist, to the point that they have no clue who Antichrist is, and they're incapable of recognizing him in his work, even as he's doing his work right in front of their face. And what I'm telling you here is that what you're seeing going on the southern border, this migration crisis we have going on, is the work of Antichrist. It's right in your face. I mean, they don't even try to hide it. It's right in your face. And you have to understand that this is an example of political Romanism. That's what you're seeing going on. Now, that crisis on the southern border is one very dramatic example of, as I said, what can be called political Romanism. Now, this crisis has been brought about by the illegitimate Roman Catholic president, Joe Biden, who has a picture of himself with the Pope. It's on a desk. It sits right behind him. If you see pictures of Joe Biden sitting in the Oval Office at the Resolute desk, there's this table behind him, and it's got all these kind of like family pictures on it. And there's a picture. I think it's over. I think it sits over his left shoulder. That's a picture of Joe Biden with Pope Francis, and that tells you all you really need to know about whose ideas are running the show. Now, there's other proof of that as well. Like I say, I mean, Joe Biden's actually quoted from, approvingly quoted from one of the Pope's encyclicals. He attends a parish in Washington, D.C. that's run by the Jesuits. The Jesuit America magazine actually ran an article on this earlier this year, kind of boasting about all of that. And I think it was, and of course, one of the things that some people have considered controversial is that this parish church won't withhold communion from Joe Biden. Some of these Roman Catholic bishops have made noises about that, and they say, well, Joe Biden, he advocates for for abortion, and we may just hold communion for him. And well, Pope Francis came out and ordered the bishops not to withhold communion, and this Jesuit parish does not do it. And of course that's all fakery. Um, you know the you know the the Roman Catholic Church would never embarrass its boy Joe Biden by withholding communion from him. They love the fact that they have a Roman Catholic president, and if he has to go out and say some things about abortion that contradict official church teaching, they're totally fine with that. I don't even think that the Roman Catholic Church, the officials of the Roman Catholic Church, really care at all about abortion. I think they just want the issue. I think there are individual Roman Catholics, lay Catholics, who do care about that issue, but no, I don't think that the bishops actually themselves care about the abortion issue. Now, what's interesting about all of this? Well, one other thing I wanted to say here, a few other things. I mentioned the fact that Joe Biden is an illegitimate president. I think it's pretty obvious that that election was stolen. And the 2020 presidential election, and it was stolen by the party of Romanism, and rebellion. I've talked about Romanism and rebellion. That's a quote from, it was a Presbyterian minister and Union Civil War veteran, Samuel D. Burchard. He included that in a speech that he gave in 1884. He called the Democrats the party of Romanism and rebellion. And that's what they were then, and that's what they are now. The Democratic Party is the home of the Roman Catholic Church in the United States of America. Now, some people might say, well, there are Roman Catholic Republicans. Well, yeah, there are, but their power base is the Democratic Party. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think it's interesting too, talking about the idea of a stolen election, is that the two elections with the most evidence of serious fraud were both won by Roman Catholics. I'm thinking here, of course, John F. Kennedy in 1960, and then Joe Biden here just recently in 2020. Now, when JFK was running in 1960, he had to go out of his way to disavow any control of him by the Roman Catholic Church. He really had to work hard to convince people, I'm not under the control of the bishops or the Pope, because people were really concerned about that, as well they should have been. But in 2020, Joe Biden openly embraces the Pope's encyclical and his climate change policies and a whole bunch of his other policies, including his immigration policy. And as I said, he favorably quoted the Pope's encyclical on his campaign website. Now, Joe Biden, as I also mentioned here too, he's openly promoted the current popes and the Roman Catholic Church state's longstanding policy of pushing nation-breaking welfare migration. And I'm not going to go into all the details on that. This is a pretty big topic, and I've written actually a couple of fairly long series on immigration and gone into some depth on the Roman Catholic Church state stance on migration and immigration. One document that you may want to check out if you're interested. There's an article that was written back in 2006, and I've quoted this article numerous times. It's called "Romanizing America Through Illegal Immigration." It's written by Pastor Ralph Ovedal. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes here. But it's really kind of a critique of a document that was written in 2003 by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops together with their counterparts in Mexico. It's called "Strangers No Longer Together on a Journey of Hope." And it's basically into the application of Roman Catholic social teaching to immigration into the United States of America. And big hint here, the Roman Catholic Church and U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops want to flood the United States of America with as many migrants as possible. And if you happen to be an American citizen, stick you with the bill. And they think that's awesome. They think that's Christian. Well, it's not Christian. It's theft. They are very confused themselves. And of course, they confuse others with their teaching. But you don't have to go back to 2006 to find, or 2003 when Strangers No Longer was written. You can pick up pro-mass migrant welfare immigration statements from Rome almost on a weekly basis. I mean, you can just be overwhelmed by them. I mean, I've saved so many of these articles, I can't hardly keep track of them all. I mean, here's just a very recent one. And let's see if I can get this back. Bear with me just a moment here. Okay, here we go. I'm going to do a screen share on this again. Let's get that back here. It's not what we want. Well, now it's wanting to. Okay. Well, for whatever reason, my system is not cooperating with me. Why is it doing that? Let's see if this will let me sign in here. Sorry about this. Okay, there we go. Getting closer here all the time. Stalling for time. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so we get that window going. All right. And there we go. Bingo, the magic of technology. I'm getting better at this thing. But as I said, I'm still a little bit rusty at it. So this is an article that appeared just this past week. It's September 16th, so just a couple days ago. So September 16th, 2021. It's written by this fellow named Daniel Flores. Now, Daniel Flores, as we see, if you scroll down to the bottom of this here, Bishop Flores leads the Roman Catholic Diocese of Brownsville, Texas, which is Brownsville, Texas is right on the U.S.-Mexico border. And it's been the ground zero for a lot of the mass migration that's been going on since Joe Biden committed immigration treason against our country earlier this year by getting rid of all of Donald Trump's immigration restrictions and also giving out what some people call la invitación. You don't have to know a whole lot of Spanish to be able to translate la invitación, the invitation. A lot of these migrants that are pouring across the southern border are calling Joe Biden's policies the invitation. Basically Joe Biden said, y'all come up here, and then we stand back and say, wow, look at all these people coming up here. Who knew that could possibly happen? All of this is directly on the shoulders of Joe Biden and to a lesser degree, Kamala Harris. They are committing treason against the United States of America about what they're doing. And it's absolutely appalling. But let's take just a quick look at this article. It's called A Christian Responsibility to Migrants. Governor Greg Abbott is undermining our religious obligation to help those in need. So this bishop, this Daniel Flores, this basically I call him a henchman, one of Antichrist henchmen. He's upset that Greg Abbott doesn't want massive number of migrants pouring into Texas. He's upset that Greg Abbott actually wants to do something to protect Texans against this migration flood. And again, this is the Wall Street Journal here. Okay, so we're not talking about some obscure publication. We're not talking about some dark corner of the internet here. This is the Wall Street Journal opinion page. And it features this Roman Catholic bishop, and you can see here in the picture. Look at this. I mean, here's a picture of Catholic Charities RGV. That's Catholic Charities RGV. That means Rio Grande Valley. So this is Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley, and of course there are different Catholic Charities chapters all over the place. There's the Catholic Charities of Southwest Ohio, where I am, and they're out there. Actually, the Catholic Charities of Southwest Ohio, they're out there boasting about all the Afghan refugees that they're bringing in. But that's a whole nother story. Even though it's closely related to this, but it's a different story. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole here today. But I just wanted to show you just an example. This is the kind of stuff that you can find from the Roman Catholic Church state and from the henchmen of the Roman Catholic Church state on an almost daily basis. And in this particular case, this guy, this bishop, he says, we remember that Jesus' answer to the question, who is my neighbor, was the parable of the Good Samaritan. And he cites Luke 10:25-37. And this bishop, he goes on to say, well, the Roman Catholic Church is just doing the same thing that the Good Samaritan did. Well, that's a bunch of nonsense. What they're doing has nothing to do with what the Good Samaritan did. The biggest difference, one of the most obvious differences, of course, is that the Good Samaritan, he was helping a victim of crime, a crime committed by other people. These highwaymen, they assaulted and robbed this fellow. Well, the massive influx of migrants is a crime that's being committed against the United States, and the principal criminal that's carrying this stuff out is the Roman Catholic Church state. So they created this situation in the first place. They're not the heroes riding up to put the fire out. They're the guy that set your house on fire and then rides up in the fire truck and says, "Oh, hey, I'm going to ride and I'm going to be the hero and put the fire out." And that's a bunch of nonsense. The Good Samaritan did not assault the man on the road. The Good Samaritan came to his rescue. The Roman Catholic Church state is assaulting the United States of America. Antichrist, the Pope Francis I, is assaulting the United States of America with his migrant hordes. And then he wants to sit back here and he wants his representatives in the United States. They want to come out here and act like somehow they're doing the doing the Lord's work. Well, again, that's nonsense. They're committing crimes, is what they're doing, and they're committing a treason against the United States of America. Another thing about this is that the Good Samaritan gave of his own goods and he gave of his own time. Catholic Charities is a huge recipient. They receive billions of dollars a year in taxpayer funds. So a lot of the so-called charity that they're giving out is actually being paid for by you, the taxpayer. They are paid a handsome sum of money to resettle refugees in this country, for example. And all these Afghan refugees they're bringing in and boasting about how wonderfully humanitarian they are. This stuff's all being paid for by U.S. taxpayers. It's not being paid for by the Roman Church state. God forbid they use their own money. And of course, what they want to do is they want to bring all these people in. And who knows? Maybe they do use a little bit of their own money for some of these migrants. But what they want to do is they want to put them all on the dole. And then they want to get them to flood into the Catholic Church. And then they want them to vote for the Democrats. So they can have even more socialism than what they have now and Romanize the United States of America. So again, they try to portray themselves as these great humanitarians. Oh, we're just doing this for the good. No, you're not doing it for that. It's very obvious that they're doing this to advance their own social program in the United States of America. Steve Bannon, and I've quoted Steve Bannon many times on this. He talked about how it's obvious that they're doing this to fill their churches, to increase their power. And Steve Bannon's a Roman Catholic. He's a Roman Catholic who's actually honest enough to talk about the fraud of the immigration policies of the Roman Church state. Another Roman Catholic who's had some good things to say and some very pointed criticism of Rome and its immigration policies is Michelle Malkin. She's a Roman Catholic, but she has pointed out and has not been afraid at all to point out the fact that Rome gins up a lot of this this immigration disaster. This is on them. And for this bishop to try to compare what he's doing to the Good Samaritan is simply it's just theological fraud. He realizes how fraudulent. Maybe he knows he's lying about it, or maybe he really believes this stuff. I don't know what his state of mind is, but this is just nonsense. And here's another example. I wanted to show this to you as well. And let me see. I didn't put that in there. It's a tweet. The person, I mentioned the fact that we looked at this picture here where it's Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley. Well, the executive director of Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley is this nun by the name of Norma Pimentel, and it came out, and this was maybe a month or two back, that the Catholic Charities was housing huge numbers of immigrants, these migrants who were COVID positive, who tested positive for COVID, in hotels in some of these local Texas towns. And when she was asked about how many of these COVID positive migrants that they were taking care of, her comment was, "I've been advised not to comment." That's what she said. So, you're going to bring in all these COVID positive people, and we're told that COVID is the biggest health crisis of our time ever, and we all have to be locked down and have mandatory vaccines and have our civil rights destroyed. If you happen to be an American citizen, but if you're an illegal immigrant, you come in here, you can just do whatever you want to. Um, and when this came out, of course, she hides behind a fog of no comment. And again, that's just typical of the Roman Catholic Church. They're not responsible to anybody. Certainly not responsible to you or me. They can do whatever they want to do, and they don't have to answer for it. And again, that's pretty typical of the arrogance of the Roman Catholic Church. That's really about all I had today. See, I've been on for, oh golly, I guess about 35 minutes or so. That's really about all I had for tonight. What I'd like to do, I want to come back and study this issue in depth, because there's so much fraud and deceit on the part of the Roman Catholic Church. Number one, that's a great frustrator of mine. And then number two is the fact that Protestant ministers are not saying anything about this. And of course, part of the problem is the Protestant ministers, the vast majority of them, do not recognize Rome as the Babylonian harlot of Revelation, and they do not recognize the Pope as the Antichrist of the New Testament, which he is. We've gotten very confused. We've gotten very cowardly. And it's about time that the Lord's people spoke out about this stuff. So that's all I have for today. Again, thanks so much for listening. I really do appreciate that. I hope to see you again, Lord willing, next week, but hopefully sometime, if not sometime soon. Thanks so much for listening, and you have a great night. Goodbye.